3 devastating truths God revealed at 3 a.m. Trust his secret timing. Prepare for the miracle. The clock struck 3, the witching hour, when shadows dance and secrets come alive. The air felt electric, crackling with an energy so thick you could slice it with a knife. That's when Sarah awoke, heart racing, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. In that instant, everything felt wrong. She could feel it in her bones, deep and chilling, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. What could it be? What truth was waiting to be unveiled? In her dimly lit room, the shadows warped and twisted, whispering secrets of the unknown. It was more than just the ticking of the clock. It was the heartbeat of the universe, signaling that the time for revelation was at hand. As she sat up, a cold sweat clung to her neck, and the world around her seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, rattling the windows and shaking her resolve. But it wasn't just the weather that unnerved her. It was the feeling that she was being watched, that eyes lurked in the darkness waiting, and then, as if summoned, a flicker of light danced outside her window, bright when it should have been dark. It glimmered and faded, a flickering hope or a warning. Her heart pounded louder. Was this a message? The whispers within her grew louder. Trust his timing. They carried with them a promise, yet laced with uncertainty that made her question everything she thought she knew. Time passed slowly, each tick of the clock echoing like a drumbeat in her mind. She remembered stories, tales of those who woke in the midnight hour, touched by divine insight. Had God chosen her, alone in the dead of night, to reveal something monumental? Could it be more than just a restless dream? A powerful urge to uncover the truth gripped her, pulling her toward the window. She just had to know. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chill of the night air bit at her skin, sending shivers down her spine. As she glanced out, her breath caught in her throat. There, illuminated by the silvery moonlight, stood a figure, cloaked in shadows. Its presence sent a shock through her body, a mix of fear and awe. What was it waiting for? What did it want from her? Time became fluid, bending around, the anticipation coiling in her gut. She felt the weight of a decision looming over her, and questions swirled like fog around her mind. Who was this figure? What truths would be revealed? As she stood frozen, the figure began to move, gliding closer, its intentions unreadable. The air trembled, thick with tension, and Sarah's heart raced to keep pace. Every second stretched like eternity, and in that moment, she realized the truth of her life was about to change forever. Would she be ready for the miracle that awaited her? The figure stepped into the moonlight, its features becoming clearer, a gaunt face, sharp angles that seemed to flicker like candlelight. Sarah squinted, her breath held tight in her throat. Eyes, dark as midnight, locked onto hers. An overwhelming sense of familiarity washed over her, like half-remembered dreams slipping through her fingers. Sarah, the figure whispered, a voice smooth yet ancient, echoing in her mind. Her world spun, disoriented between fear and recognition. How did this entity know her name? The room felt smaller, the shadows closing in as the figure advanced. Its presence radiated an unsettling mixture of warmth and chill, drawing her in while simultaneously pushing her away. Who are you? She managed to choke out, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. What do you want with me? The figure paused, its gaze piercing through the darkness, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something more, the glimmer of compassion. I bring a message, a warning. The tension in Sarah's chest tightened. A warning? It seemed impossible to breathe. She wished she could pull the covers over her head and hide from whatever this was, yet an undeniable force rooted her to the spot. From deep in her soul, she felt the urgency in its presence, burning bright like a beacon. What warning? She pressed, fear clawing at her throat as the wind outside howled louder, drowning out the silence that followed. Change is coming, but with it, great peril. it replied, its voice growing more insistent as though each word thrummed against her skin. You are chosen to witness what others fear to see. But you must act quickly, or you may find it too late to prepare. A wave of unease washed over her as visions of chaos flickered through her mind. Faces of familiar people twisted with fear and uncertainty. Scenes of confusion and regret, millions of lives hanging in the balance. What do you mean? What must I do? She asked, desperation creeping into her tone. Trust your instinct and watch the signs, it said. The shadows around it shimmered, coiling like serpents ready to strike. The answers you seek lie not in the daylight, but in the darkest hour. Beware of the silence. It holds the truth you've been yearning for. What truth? Before she could grasp the weight of its words, the figure began to retreat, melding back into the shadows, but not without leaving a lingering chill where it had stood. Behind it, the light blinked out, and Sarah felt an empty void where the warmth had been. She trembled, the world outside her window, now eerily calm. Moments turned to minutes, yet her heart still raced. The revelation felt both profound and paralyzing. What kind of change loomed ahead? And how could she prepare for something so vague and undefined? As she stumbled back, grappling with the unknown, a sudden jolt echoed through her. The sound echoed fiercely, a signaling crash like thunder rolling in the distance. Her body tensed. She pressed her face against the cold glass of the window, trying to see through the darkness. Just then, a shriek broke the silence, a cry for help that twisted through the night. Was it real? Her heart raced again, pounding in sync with the nagging voice in her mind. It begged her to look outside one more time, to confront whatever lay waiting beyond her window. And thus, she stood, teetering on the edge of the unknown, wrestling with her fears. What had she just witnessed? And what awaited her in the shadows beyond? As the shriek faded, swallowed by the night, Sarah took a deep breath. A decision had to be made. Should she step into the unknown, or retreat back into the safety of her room? The night was far from over, and mysteries still clung to the darkness. Would she embrace what was yet to come, or allow fear to bind her? The sound echoed again, more urgent, this time a series of frantic knocks at her door. Her heart raced. It was impossible to tell if that cry for help had been from outside or a phantom whisper in her head. Sarah, let me in. The voice was frantic, tinged with desperation. It was Mark, her neighbor and a friend since childhood. She could hear the tremor in his tone, the raw panic that cut through the stillness of the night. Without thinking, Sarah stumbled towards the door. But her body hesitated, gripped by an invisible dread. What if whatever had just spoken to her was somehow connected to Mark? What danger lurked just outside her modest apartment? Sarah, please. Mark's voice cracked, and fear twisted in her stomach. She flipped the lock and swung the door open wide. Mark burst in, his face pale, eyes wild. You have to help me. They're coming. Who is coming? She managed to ask, her mind racing back to the forgettable warnings of the figure in the shadows. Those who know, they know you've been chosen. He grabbed her shoulders, shaking her slightly, urgency etching lines of panic across his features. What are you talking about? Chosen for what? They can feel it, Sarah. They can sense it. To change the peril. You got a message, and they don't want you to prepare. They'll do anything to stop you. Sarah felt the weight of his words pressed down on her chest. Something ominous was unfolding, but she was still grappling with the reality of a chosen destiny. What do you mean? Who wants to stop me? Before Mark could reply, a low growl erupted from outside, deep and rumbling, reverberating through the walls. They both turned towards the window. Shadows danced in the alley below, shifting like dark water under a moonlit sky. It's too late to hide, he whispered, stepping closer to her. We have to leave now. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Could she trust Mark? She didn't have time to think as the growls grew louder, punctuated by the sound of footsteps, many footsteps approaching fast. Grab whatever you can. We need to get to the rallying point. He tugged at her arm, leading her back towards the bedroom. But as she rushed past the remnants of her former life, visions from her earlier encounter flooded her mind. The figure's warning echoed in her thoughts, merging with the chaos swelling around her. Mark, what rallying point? What is going on? She almost screamed, struggling to process the reality unraveling at a terrifying speed. The old church. The one on Fifth. You'll find others there, just like you. He frantically shoved items into her backpack, the memories of their childhood intermingling with the strange sense of impending doom. Outside, the growling morphed into a series of panicked shouts, voices incoherent, yet laced with toxicity. The shadows shifted ominously, as if aware of their movements. "Sarah, we need to go?" Desperation colored Mark's words, a wild look in his eyes. Summoning every ounce of courage, she grabbed her bag and nodded, heart pounding in her throat. There was no turning back. The night held too many secrets, and the figure's warning burrowed deep within her, an ominous reminder that something catastrophic was on the horizon. With one last glance towards her apartment, she stepped out into the unknown, her choice made. But as they raced down the corridor, the front door suddenly slammed shut behind them. She shot a glance over her shoulder, dread creeping slowly like ice in her veins. "Did you lock it?" Mark's voice trembled, but what loomed behind them was worse. The growls intensified, becoming a chorus of restless murmurs. As they neared the exit, shadows surged around them, creeping closer, encroaching on their fragile resolve. "Run!" she shouted, her pulse hammering. They barreled out into the night, the fading light casting dangerous silhouettes. But as they stumbled into the street, she could already feel the weight of the dark truth clawing at their heels. Whatever was coming was determined to catch up, and they were now neck-deep in the thick of it. "Don't look back!" Mark yelled, but she couldn't help it. They were not alone, and the night was far darker than she'd anticipated. What truth awaited them now as they hurtled into the unknown? They dashed down the narrow street, the cold air biting into their lungs as they ran. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in Sarah's chest, each step resonating with the urgency of their plight. Mark led the way, glancing over his shoulder with every stride, but Sarah felt it more than saw it. The shadows were not just lingering. They were closing in. "Faster!" Mark shouted, the cadence of his voice layered with fear. The growls intensified, merging with the sound of feet pounding against pavement, a wild symphony of terror that seemed to reverberate in the very ground beneath them. "Who is chasing us?" she panted, dread creeping into her thoughts like a dark fog. They turned a corner and sprinted toward the old church, its outline silhouetted against the night sky. She could already see the flickering lights of candles through its cracked windows, a beacon in the consuming darkness. "I don't know," Mark gasped, desperation leaving his voice raw. "All I know is they're drawn to you. We have to get to those who understand, who can help." The fear in his tone fueled her own. She couldn't shake the feeling that this entire ordeal was far too intertwined with her life than she'd ever wanted it to be. Did she have a destiny? Or had she merely stumbled into someone else's nightmare? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them. Mark spun around, eyes wide with horror. "Keep going," he screamed again, shoving her forward as he turned to face the oncoming tide of shadows. She could hear it now, a cacophony of snarls blending with the frantic footsteps of something unidentifiable, the figures moving with an unnatural speed, hidden just behind the veil of darkness. Her heart twisted as she caught a glimpse of glinting eyes. Fear paralyzed her for a moment, and she almost stumbled. With every ounce of determination, Sarah pressed on, the church getting nearer. The old wooden door was ajar, swaying slightly, and she reached for it just as Mark caught up. He pushed her through, then turned back. "I'll hold them off, just know." She shot back, pulling him inside. "You have to come." The inside was chaotic with whispers and glances. Figures cloaked in shadow gathered in the modest space, their faces obscured. A woman with braided hair stepped forward, her eyes shimmering in the candlelight. "You've brought her," she said firmly, locking eyes with Sarah. "You have to trust us, but time is short." Mark slammed the door shut behind them, barricading it with his shoulder just as the growls transformed into frenzied howls, the sound rising in volume and intensity. The shadows pressed against the door, claws scraping as the growls morphed into unholy chants, a harmony of rage and hunger. "What are they?" Sarah's voice trembled, her breath coming in short gasps. "They are the Seekers," the woman responded solemnly. "They want to claim what is theirs, to take the chosen one before she realizes her power." "Power?" Sarah echoed, the word tasting foreign and heavy on her tongue. "Yes," the woman said. "You hold the key to stopping this chaos. But it starts with embracing what you've been given and what you will have to sacrifice to protect it." Mark braced against the door, eyes darting with disbelief, heart pounding in sync with the chaos outside. What does that mean? We can't sacrifice anything if we don't even know what we're up against. The candlelight flickered, casting ghostly shadows on the walls as the woman took a step closer. You'll have to confront your deepest fears, Sarah. What's coming will test your resolve, your heart. But remember, only when you accept who you truly are can you grasp what lies ahead. The door splintered under the pressure of ravenous hands, a splintering crack cutting through Sarah's thoughts. The shadows, more than mere monsters, were manifestations of her own insecurities, the fears she had tucked away until now. And then it hit her. Everything she had ever avoided, every trembling uncertainty and whisper of dread, surged back at her. Sarah Mark's voice reached her like a lifeline amidst the storm. You need to choose fight or flight. As the door began to give way, she took a deep breath, staring into the shadows, grasping the potential of what she could become. Fight, she said, her voice steady, unyielding against the storm raging outside. But as the door splintered open, darkness spilling into their sanctuary, the pivotal question hung in the air. What would she sacrifice to embrace her power? And beyond that door, something was waiting, something that might just change everything forever. The door burst open, an explosion of shadows cascading into the church like a living, breathing entity. Eerie wails reverberated off the walls, cloaking the candlelit sanctuary in an impenetrable darkness. Time slowed as Sarah felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, a force not just of fear, but of something deeper, an echo of her own doubts, insecurities clawing for her surrender. Get back, the woman cried, pulling Sarah behind her as Mark strained against the encroaching darkness, muscles taut, sweat dripping down his brow. The flickering candles barely held their ground against the void, illuminating the faces around them, fear etched into every feature. Do something, Mark shouted, panic rising in his voice. With her heart drumming wildly in her chest, Sarah forced herself to concentrate. Was she really the key? What did that even mean? The questions churned in her mind, mixing with the primal instinct to survive. Unlock it, Sarah, the woman urged, her voice cutting through the chaos. You have it within you to stop them. The shadows surged forward. They weren't just attacking. They were seeking, clawing for something integral, something alive. And in that moment, a realization struck her. She had always held back, always stayed in the shadows of her own life, afraid to step into the light and face the world, her potential. Focus. The woman's fierce gaze bore into her, demanding action. You have the power. Use it. Sarah's breath steadied, the fog of fear clearing just enough for a flicker of clarity. What if embracing her fear was the very key to unlocking her power? What if all she needed was to take that leap of faith? Mark struggled against the shadows, his face strained, desperately attempting to hold their advance at bay. Please, Sarah, don't give in. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself. She felt a twinge of something new, a spark igniting within. It swelled, drawing energy from her racing heart, flickers of courage piercing through the despair. She could either let them take her or find the strength to confront them. Leave him alone, she cried, her voice stronger, more resonant than she had ever known it to be. The words flowed from a place deep inside, her declaration swirling with her intent, as if summoned by her conviction. A wave of shimmering light erupted from her as it coursed through the room. The shadows hesitated, recoiling from the luminosity, screeching as if wounded. They twisted, snarled, but the light seemed to draw power from their terror, amplifying Sarah's resolve. Keep going, Sarah, Mark shouted, a note of disbelief mingled with hope buzzing in his voice. The shadows faltered, but they were still there, writhing, hungry. The woman stepped forward, extending her hands toward Sarah. Channel it. You have to channel who you are meant to be. Sarah clenched her fists, and the light intensified, soaking the church in its warmth. Memories flooded her mind, the moments when she'd backed down, shied away. Each doubt fueled the light, brightening with each recollection. And then she remembered something her grandmother had once said. Your fears have no real power unless you give them something. What you fear reveals the path to what you must embrace. With that clarity, she stretched her arms wide and embraced the light. You're not taking anything from me, she yelled, her voice ringing like a bell. The shadows screeched, their form fluctuating under the radiance enveloping Sarah. They weren't just monsters, they were fears stripped of their source, lost echoes of what she had once deemed important. And the moment she promised herself to let the past stay there, locked in a hidden vault, she felt an overwhelming rush of empowerment. But before she could fully comprehend the transformation, darkness surged again, darker and more maddened than before. Clawing shadows surrounded Mark, tugging at his flesh, threatening to pull him into their embrace. "No!" Sarah screamed, lunging forward instinctively. Strong tendrils of light cascaded around her. The moment hung in the balance, her heart pounded, knowing she had to choose between saving him or seizing her own power completely. "Help him!" the woman cried, her eyes widening as both fear and courage collided in the air. And as Sarah reached out, the shadows twisted, desperate to regain hold. What could she sacrifice? Would she risk it all to save the one person who understood the depth of her struggles? An excruciating decision loomed before her, the reality of the moment stark. "Make your choice," echoed the desperate voices around her as the shadows spiraled, looming ominously. But what if the weight of the decision brought her truer power than she ever knew? All eyes turned to Sarah, the air thick with uncertainty and raging shadows. Could she embrace both? A moment of reckoning edged closer, the last vestiges of fear giving way to a new dawn. What would she sacrifice, and would her choice mean salvation for all of them? The shadows clamored for an answer, and the answer was all too tangible now. The shadows tightened, threatening to swallow Mark whole. A knot twisted in Sarah's stomach as she felt the weight of the moment settle upon her. She could almost hear the echoes of her grandmother's words. "What you fear reveals the path to what you must embrace." Mark's eyes were wide, pleading, "Please, Sarah, you can do this." With every fiber of her being, Sarah fought against the second-guessing that threatened to creep back in. Could she truly harness her light to save him? She drew a sharp breath, and the air around her crackled with energy, the light radiating from her brightening the church. But the shadows were relentless. They coiled around Mark, whispering dark promises, promising release from pain, control, power. It was intoxicating. "No," she shouted, wading through the chaos. "You don't get to have him." In that moment, she made her choice. "I will not choose fear over love." The words erupted from her. With that declaration, the lights surged in response, expanding outwards and enveloping the shadows. For a brief instant, everything froze. The shadows recoiled, their growls mingling with a chorus of dissonant cries. "Sarah," the woman urged, her voice breaking through the roar. "Use the light. Your light. It wants to break free." As the shadows writhed, Sarah's hands ignited with energy. She remembered every moment of trembling, the weight of doubt pulling her under, the times she felt invisible in a crowded room, overlooked and unheard. Each memory was a brushstroke adding to the canvas of her luminous strength. "Get back!" Mark shouted as he fought against the graspers around him. But Sarah felt a flood of determination wash over her. "No more hiding," she cried, raising her arms high, channeling every ounce of light she could muster. With a fierce shout, she thrust her arms downward, sending a shockwave of light across the room. It shot through the shadows like a thunderclap. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, their form beginning to falter under the radiant assault. Then something shifted, an electrifying spark of recognition passed through her. The shadows weren't just manifestations of fear, they were fragments of her past, echoes of hurt. They clung to her, feeding off her reluctance to let go. "It's time to release you," she screamed, wrenching her memories from their grasp. Mark swayed, the shadows pushing against him like a riptide. But he held the line, eyes locked onto Sarah. "You're doing it. Keep going." The light grew, illuminating the crack-lined walls of the church, and Sarah felt the warmth spreading through her chest, wrapping around her like a protective embrace. The shadows swirled violently, desperate to hold on, but they were losing their strength, their screams morphing into howls of despair. "Embrace your truth," the woman called, her voice resonating through the tumult. Sarah's heart thundered. She felt the weight of the shadows threatening to drag her back into doubt, into fear. But with every ounce of conviction, she pushed back against it. "I am not afraid." It echoed like a battle cry, each syllable fueling the light. The shadows hissed, writhing in reaction, dissolving into nothingness with a flash that lit the entire sanctuary. It was more than just a light, it was a declaration, not just of her power, but of her refusal to be defined by fear any longer. Suddenly, the church was suffused with warmth, the shadows evaporating like mist at dawn. Mark staggered free, collapsing to the floor as the last remnants of darkness disintegrated around him. Sarah, he gasped, taking in the radiant glow surrounding her. He looked raw, vulnerable, fear still lingering in his eyes but filled with an awe that mingled with relief. You did it. But just as they began to breathe again, a low rumble came from behind the altar, a rhythmic thud that threatened to shake the very foundations of the church. What is that? Sarah whispered, heart racing again. The air thickened with an ancient energy, the shadows retreating but not vanquished. An ominous voice echoed through the sanctuary, dark and powerful. You may have driven back my minions, but your battle has only just begun. Fear returned, creeping back into Sarah's chest, but along with it was an undeniable surge of exhilaration. She had stumbled into her power, but what would she face next? What lurked behind the altar, waiting for the chance to reclaim its hold? Would she have the strength to stand against it? The chamber shuddered as that question hung heavy in the air. Was their victory just a fleeting breath before the storm? The shadows had faded, but an ominous stillness filled the church, thick and heavy. Sarah's chest tightened, heart hammering like a war drum. Mark scrambled to his feet, his gaze darting nervously toward the altar. Did you hear that? He breathed, voice hoarse. Sarah nodded. The echo of that dark voice still clung to the air, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. We need to move, she urged. We can't just stay here. The thudding intensified from behind the altar, each pulse matching the beat of her heart. It was as if something sinister was awakening, ready to unleash itself upon them. Should we check it out? Mark asked, his hesitant tone cutting through the tension. She felt a flicker of doubt. What if it's worse? A shard of fear pierced her, but she quickly trapped it. They had already endured too much. There was no going back now. We won't find peace unless we face whatever that is. Mark swallowed hard, and then nodded firmly, the look in his eyes shifting from uncertainty to resolve. Together, they crept closer to the altar, every step amplified in the heavy silence. As they reached the edge, Sarah peered over it. The sight before her was beyond anything she could have imagined. The old altar was splintered, jagged cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. Inside, an ancient, glowing orb pulsed softly, casting an eerie light that flickered like a heartbeat. It pulsed with the same energy that coursed through her moments ago, but now it's drawing me in, she whispered, entranced. Yet, with the allure of that orb came an unsettling urgency. The thuds transformed into sharp knocks. What is that? Mark asked, spotting the changing expression on her face. It seems almost alive, she murmured, reaching hesitantly for the orb, her fingers just inches from its surface. Every instinct screamed for her to back away, yet an indescribable pull wrapped around her, urging her closer. The pulsating light radiated warmth, calling her, and with it, depths of courage she hadn't known she possessed. Suddenly, a roar erupted from the orb, the walls shaking as echoing whispers filled her mind. Sarah, help us. Visions blurred through her head, scenes of anguish, promises broken, shadows of forgotten dreams. They flooded her senses, drowning her in emotions. Amid the chaos, a flicker of recognition sparked. What is this? Sarah. Mark's voice cut through her disorientation. Get away from it. But she couldn't move. She was entrenched in its power. It wants something from me, she gasped. It's connected to my past. Don't let it control you. He shouted, panic rising in his tone. With a burst of determination, Sarah ripped herself from the orb's grasp. No. It roared, the ground trembling beneath her feet. You cannot escape the truth. Her eyes narrowed. Hadn't she just embraced her truth? Let it go? She shouted back defiantly, arms raised. The pulsing light flickered, hesitation rippling through it. Mark pulled her arm, urgency etched on his face as they stumbled back. We need to leave. But as they backed away, the shadows returned, swirling ominously around the altar, shaped like limbs reaching for them. They pressed in closer, cold and unyielding, refusing to let them escape now that they had attempted to face the orb. Sarah Mark's voice faded, fear taking over. She closed her eyes, recalling her earlier stand against the darkness. We faced it once, she whispered. We can do it again. The orb's glow flickered again as the shadows closed in. What do we do? Mark shouted, almost frantic. Trust your light, Sarah? The woman's voice rang in her ear, a mantra of possibility. Together, Sarah exclaimed. Light flared, strong and bright, filling the sanctuary as she channeled every ounce of strength. As the shadows stumbled, her determination surged. But just as she unleashed it, the ground beneath them cracked. A sudden drop opened up, threatening to swallow them whole. Sarah! The light flickered, uncertainty reigniting. Hold on, she cried, grabbing Mark's hand. Would they ascend into the light or fall into the abyss? In that defining moment, Sarah grappled with choices far beyond her own, as the shadows closed in, molding into a grotesque figure looming above them. Let us see how far you'll go, it sneered, the air thick with impending doom. With every heartbeat echoing like a warning, the ominous figure shifted, and Sarah felt the weight of fate pressing down on her. What was this creature? What did it want? The ground trembled again as the altar itself seemed to unravel beneath them. This wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning. And the real question loomed larger. Would she triumph, or would darkness claim them both? The shadows thickened, pressing in on Sarah and Mark as the figure loomed over them, its grotesque form shifting and swirling, a fusion of darkness and malice. Every breath felt heavy, weighed down by dread and uncertainty. Sarah! Mark yelled, his voice breaking through the darkness. His hand tightened around hers, grounding her. She glanced at him, their eyes locking a momentary connection amid the chaos. In that instant, she realized they were all they had. What do we do? The creature's laughter slithered through the air like a serpent. You believe you can fight me? It hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. You are nothing but memories caught in a battle you cannot win. Memories. The word reverberated in Sarah's mind, pulling at the fragments of her past that had also been tucked away in a dark corner. She shook her head violently, trying to shake the warmth of nostalgia that brewed within her. We're not nothing. We have strength. With each word, she felt the flickering light within her pulse harder, emboldening her resolve. She could harness this. This fight was for herself, for those dark pieces of her past that had long haunted her every step. Mark, together. On three. Her voice rang clear, sharp in the turmoil. Mark nodded, determination hardening his features. 1, 2. A rumble echoed, the altar's cracks spreading like violent veins. 3. As their voices united, a flash of light exploded from their hands, igniting the darkness. A radiant glow surged forth, a wave of defiance against the encroaching shadow. It created a fissure through the uncertainty, brightening their desperate fight. Foolish mortals. The creature screeched, its form writhing in discomfort. You think light can defeat me? I am your past. I am your fears. The air shimmered with its intensity, yet the light pulled them forward, urging them to rise above the abyss. Sarah remembered the faces of lost love, the dreams she thought were gone forever, and the courage instilled in her by a comforting figure from her past. No, she shouted defiantly. You don't define me. I define myself. The shadows recoiled, fracturing like glass under pressure. The orb flared back to life, its glow growing stronger, filling the sanctuary with a brilliant expanse of hope amidst darkness. It whirled fiercely, pulling Sarah back toward it, as if sensing its moment had returned. Embrace your truth. It called, a voice steady and fierce. The figures in the shadows, once twisted and malicious, transformed momentarily into familiar faces, friends, family, each one offering quiet nods of encouragement. Memories that had once caged her suddenly became wings, urging her to break free. Let go, Mark shouted, his voice a harmonious echo alongside hers. Let it all go. The ground shook violently beneath them as the shadows writhed. You think you can escape? I will tear your very essence apart. No, she cried back, taking a resolute step toward the orb. The pull was irresistible. As she moved, the aura around her brightened, illuminating ancient symbols etched into the walls, revealing secrets long concealed. Each marked symbol pulsed with energy. They were the keys to understanding the fear, the hurt, the guilt she had harbored. "Mark, look," she breathed, urgency rising in her chest. But before Mark could respond, the figure lunged forward, a dark swath ripping through the sanctuary, ready to consume them whole. "Sarah!" he screamed, but there was no time. Heart pounding, she reached for the orb, her fingers brushing its surface just as the shadows lunged, seeking to reclaim their hold over her. A blinding flash consumed her senses. In that heartbeat, she felt the weight of her choices, and a deep, chilling realization washed over her. What if the truth meant sacrificing everything she had known? As the light enveloped them, engulfing the darkness, Sarah gasped, thinking she saw the edges of a new world, but the shadows fought hard, howling in despair. The orb pulsed ominously, caught between worlds, a violent tug-of-war for her very soul. They either broke free, or would they plunge into an oblivion deeper than the church? Time hung still, the current of fate swirling violently around her. And just like that, the light erupted once more, blinding her, engulfing everything in sight. What would come through from the other side? The universe spun violently around Sarah as she surrendered to the blinding light. It surged through her like electricity, igniting every nerve ending alive, every fear that had burdened her heart. Would she emerge whole? Or would she be splintered into pieces, lost in a realm of darkness forever? Then, everything stopped. She blinked against the brightness, but when her vision cleared, she found herself standing in an impossibly vast expanse, a landscape painted in ethereal colors. The ground beneath her felt solid yet springy, like a soft cloud. Mark was at her side, looking just as bewildered, scanning the horizon filled with shades of gold and blue. "Where are we?" he whispered, all flickering in his eyes. "I don't know," she replied quietly, her heart racing. The tranquility felt rattling, as if the calm was merely a efficy ade masking chaos just beyond their sight. That it was then they heard it, a distant, rumbling echo, a chorus of growls and whispers that seemed to swell from the very fabric of this unreal world. The shadows had followed them. "Sarah, look," Mark called out abruptly, pointing ahead where a shimmering wall of light glimmered. Within it, indistinct shapes twisted and shifted, their faces hauntingly familiar. Flashes of laughter, tears, the essence of every moment they had cherished or regretted, wishes wrapped in ethereal light. "Do we go?" she asked hesitantly, a knot tightening in her stomach. Part of her screamed to run forward, to embrace whatever awaited them. But another part recoiled, terrified that stepping into that wall meant confronting everything they'd fought against. "We have to," Mark said, determination firming his jaw. "It's the only way to put an end to this." Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded. Together, they began to walk toward the shimmering barrier, each step echoing as time stretched around them like taffy. With every inch they closed, the whispers grew louder, turning into a cacophony of voices, some encouraging, others taunting. Past mistakes, regrets, fears they thought buried loomed before them like specters in the bright expanse. "I will tear your very essence apart," the creature's taunt echoed, a reminder that their battle was far from over. But this time, the words felt insubstantial, a fleeting whisper compared to their growing resolve. Sarah clenched her fists, recalling the power within her, the connections, the love, even the pain. "We will face it," she declared, her voice rising above the cacophony. As they reached the wall, pulses of light flickered around them, urging them on, pulling them into a memory that felt like home. The faces emerged clearer, old friends, family, a community tied together by love and possibility. "Together," Mark shouted, locking eyes with her one last time. One deep, shared breath, then they plunged into the radiant light. Warmth enveloped Sarah, crashing over her in waves. The brightness consumed her, and then nothing. Silence. When she opened her eyes again, Sarah lay on a familiar floor, the scent of pine and adventure swirling around her. Home. The cocoons of their memories held deeper truths, a realization that tied each fragment of her essence together. She was not lost. She was still whole. Except, Mark was gone. Mark? Panic surged through her as the weight of absence pressed in. A chilling thought slithered into her mind. Had they really escaped? Or had they merely traded one nightmare for another? Footsteps echoed outside, and in that moment, Sarah felt something lurking beyond the comfort of home. A shadow loomed at the threshold, just out of sight. Fear slithered through her veins, a reminder that darkness could still find her. Would she truly confront the shadows alone? An icy hand gripped her heart, whispering questions that would lead to the very core of her choices. The door creaked, and the figure stepped into the light. Would this be the truth she had long awaited, or the nightmare that awaited them both? The figure stepped into the room, and Sarah's breath hitched. Was it Mark, back from whatever darkness had claimed him? A flicker of hope ignited within her, only to be snuffed out by the stark reality of who stood before her, a phantom from her past, shrouded in the very shadows she thought she'd escaped. "Sarah," the figure murmured, its voice layered with an uncanny familiarity. It was her old self, a reflection of her insecurities, every doubt she had ever faced now manifesting as a haunting specter. "You thought you could just run away? You think freedom is just a choice?" The instant recognition twisted her heart. "No, I faced you. I chose light." She instinctively stepped back, bracing herself. Yet, the memories pressed down on her. The hurt, the moments of weakness, the endless whispers that had tried to convince her she was never enough. They swarmed around her like a thick fog, clouding her view of the truth. "Choose again," it hissed, the shadows around it flickering with menace. "Will you face me or flee? You cannot outrun me. I am every choice you regret." Sarah felt the cold weight of despair settle in her stomach. "I'm not afraid," she yelled, but the conviction in her voice wavered. "You should be," it taunted. "You left, and yet here I am, a part of you that refuses to vanish." In that moment, Sarah realized the truth. Running away had only made the shadows stronger. Until she faced every piece of her history, the good and the bad, there would always be a risk of being dragged back into the darkness. With renewed determination, she lifted her chin and held her ground. "No, you've held my hand for too long. You've kept me down in the darkness, and I'm done listening." The specter of her past writhed, eyes narrowing with palpable anger. "You think you can just cast me off?" "Absolutely," she declared, drawing from the strength she had unearthed in the church, from the light she had embraced within. Every bashful moment, every pang of regret fused into the glow of her heart. "You don't define me. I define myself." As her words echoed off the walls, she felt a lightness fill the air, an energy that coursed through her veins like pure electricity. The figure shrieked, its face turning to a sea of shadows and flickers, as if the light was tearing apart its very essence. "No," it cried, dissolving like mist under the sun. "You can't escape." "I'm not escaping," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I'm choosing to be free." She felt the ground beneath her vibrate, the very fabric of her past unraveling, transforming into light that filled the room. And then, silence. The figure was gone, and the weight of her burdens evaporated like dew under the rising sun. But just as victory illuminated her spirit, a voice reached her from behind. "Sarah?" Mark's familiar tone broke through the silence like a knife through fog. Her heart lifted as she turned toward him. "Mark, you're back." Joy bubbled inside her, erasing the remnants of fear that had lingered. "Of course I am. I never left your side," he said, his eyes sincere. He stepped closer, pulling her into a warm embrace, anchoring her in the moment. "You faced the darkness. I felt you. You fought for us." The weight of all they had endured washed over her in waves. "But it's not over. There may be more shadows, more battles to face." Mark pulled back, taking her shoulders in his strong hands. "You're not alone. You're stronger than ever. And we're together now." The warmth enveloped her like a hug from the universe. With him beside her, she felt like anything was possible. "Let us make a choice together then," she replied, determination blooming in her chest. To move forward, to face whatever comes next. Together they turned toward the door, not with fear, but with a sturdy grip on each other's hands. Stepping through the threshold into the light, they prepared to confront whatever awaited them, together. As they crossed the threshold, instinctively embracing the light ahead, Sarah felt a radiant warmth envelop her, a powerful sense of belonging, of purpose, washing over her like a gentle tide. They moved forward, hearts steady, stepping into an unknown that no longer frightened them but exhilarated them. That which had once held them captive was now just a memory, and the journey ahead was theirs to shape. And now, friends, This is where the journey takes you. You need to subscribe now to don't miss the next exclusive stories that will pulse with intensity and wonder. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and ensure that this narrative echoes far and wide. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. How will Sarah and Mark tackle what lies ahead? And do not wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic ending. Your support makes all the difference. Join this amazing community now.